That one right there made me the greatest player of all time.
For
That's
so
what
many
I felt.
reasons.
And then after I stopped, I was like, that one right there made you the greatest player of all time.
The GOAT, the greatest of all time. Everyone has their opinions, none of them better than mine. In my opinion, the GOAT is 100% Bradley Beal. Today we're just going to look at the main important candidates, the main important factors, and why being the greatest doesn't necessarily mean you're the best player of all time. My name's LQ, and let's talk about it. I have no idea where's the fluffy thing? You know the fluffy thing that goes in the mic? I don't know what that is, but it's calm. I'll fix the audio because I'm a wizard. See what I did? I'm a wizard. The greatest player of all time. A lot of different ways you can talk about who the greatest player of all time is. Throughout this video, the main ways I'm going to look at is looking at advanced stats, player opinions, and the eye test. To be the greatest hooper of all time, you have to have some level of cultural impact. Do you know what I mean? So let's start off with advanced stats. Advanced stats are stats that are advanced. They're stats that aren't normal in the box score, but the things you'll see behind the box, the things that won Jokic's MVP, that kind of thing there. Advanced stats ultimately help in terms of the eye test because they show more things that you won't necessarily see in the box score. So the first advanced stat we're going to look at is the PER. Bear in mind, I don't know any of these advanced stats. I'm not a nerd. If you know them, you're a nerd. I'm not. So we're going to be learning together. But the PER is an advanced stat that gives a catch-all rating for a player during the game. It's the player efficiency rating. It will effectively summarize the entire game depending on their performance within the game. So if we look down the top 5 players of all time for their PER rating, at number 5 it's Shaquille O'Neal, at number 4 it's Anthony Davis, at number 3 it's Nikola Jokic, at number 2 it's LeBron James, and at number 1 it's Michael Jordan. In terms of the first advanced stat, Michael Jordan wins with the PER, essentially showing he is, on average, the best performer of all time. And so it's 1-0 to Michael Jordan. This stat is a bit weird because it gives an average rating for the game, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's correct, you know, because we don't say that Jokic is the 3rd best player of all time, do we? But it does overrate offense. It's a bit more complex. It doesn't really show the defense of a player. And some people think it overvalues scoring. And because Jokic is one of the best defensive centers of all time, he's quite high up in that sense. So let's take a look at a different advanced stat called VORP. VORP stands for Value Over Replacement Player. Value Over Replacement Player converts the box plus minus, which tells a player's impact on a game. If it's plus, it's positive. If it's negative, it's negative. The VORP gives an estimate of the box plus minus of each player's overall contribution to the team, measured versus what a theoretical replacement player would provide. In this sense, the replacement player is a minimum salary player or a player not in the rotation at the end of the squad, basically. In this top 5, we have at number 5, Kevin Garnett, at number 4, Karl Malone, at number 3, John Stockton, at number 2, Michael Jordan, and at number 1, LeBron Raymond James. This makes a lot of sense, you know, because this gives a player's value to their team, and Karl Malone and John Stockton were the only 2 players really on that Utah Jazz team in the 90s. It makes sense that their value throughout their entire career is greater than everyone else's in the league. But in this one, LeBron James does take the crown, which is quite impressive considering he's been a part of super teams, he's been part of teams that aren't good, and his value still remains to be high. So it's 1-1 now between LeBron James and Michael Jordan, showing that Michael Jordan isn't necessarily as valuable as LeBron James in terms of their performance for their teams. Most people's biggest problem with VORP is that it doesn't take into account The defense, which is a problem in a lot of NBA statistics, doesn't really take into account men's man-on-man defense in terms of their value, because a lot of players are the best defensive players of all time, but their VORP isn't that high. The last advanced stat I wanted to look at was win shares per 48 minutes. NBA game is 48 minutes, so win shares shows how much they are impacting a team's chances of winning. So if a player's win share is 1, it means that 100% of the time, if this player plays, the team will win. If it's 0.2 and above, it means if the team was filled with 5 of these players, the team would 100% win. So the best players in the world have 1 of above 0.2. And as we can see through the list, the top 5, once again, at number 5, it's Nikola Jokic. At number 4, it's Neil Johnston. I don't know who this guy is. I have no idea who Neil Johnston is. At number 3, it's Wilt Chamberlain. At number 2, it's David Robinson. And at number 1, it's Michael Jordan. LeBron is 7th in terms of win shares. So the stats are saying that he's a valuable player, but he doesn't necessarily contribute to winning, which I don't know how that works, but it's what the advanced stats say. I don't make the stats. I'm just a guy who speaks to a camera in his bedroom with pictures of himself behind him. For the last advanced stat, we can clearly see that Michael Jordan topples everyone else, and he's the most winning player, so it's 2-1 to Michael Jordan. Personally, in my opinion, I don't think that advanced stats are the best way to look at players' impact and to tell whether they're the greatest player of all time. For me, it's about watching them and seeing how they affect. I'm not going to watch Michael Jordan play in the 2002-2003 season when he wasn't that good for us. So I've never really watched him play live. I've never seen that. So I took the 20 best players of all time, in my opinion, and I put their opinions down on who they think the GOAT is. Obviously coming down to really LeBron and Michael Jordan. So taking all of these 20 players, we can get a real insight into who the greatest player of all time is. Some of them have played with LeBron, some of them played with MJ, some of them have played against or with both. So we're gonna go through it, and if you disagree with my top 20, it's out of order. I don't care. Kevin Durant says Michael Jordan, Steph Curry says Michael Jordan, LeBron says himself, Michael Jordan refused to say it, but he definitely thinks it's himself. Kobe Bryant says himself, of course. Shaquille O'Neal says Michael Jordan. Wilt Chamberlain never saw LeBron, so we'll just cut him out. Tim Duncan doesn't say, but he says that Michael Jordan isn't that impressive. Tim Duncan's capping. Magic Johnson says Michael Jordan. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar doesn't believe in the GOAT. Bill Russell hints at himself. Allen Iverson says LeBron James. Hakeem Olajuwon says Michael Jordan. Dirk Nowitzki says Michael Jordan. Oscar Robertson says LeBron James. Larry Bird says Michael Jordan. Giannis says MJ or LeBron. Yeah, I'm including Giannis. He's the top 20 player of all time. He's done enough. 2-time MVP. DPOY and MVP in the same season. He's won a championship. He had one of the most dominant runs in an NBA Finals. He's a top 20 player of all time. Dwayne Wade said Michael Jordan, Jerry West said Michael Jordan, and Kevin Garnett said Michael Jordan. So that answers the question, doesn't it? The greatest player of all time is Bradley Beal. It's hard to use stats to say who the GOAT is, and it's a lot harder to not use stats. Greatest of all time can mean anything and everything. Being the GOAT is about an undenying sense of winning, an inability and fear to face him, a cultural phenomenon that encompasses the NBA in full. Who else but his Ernest Michael Jeffrey Jordan? LeBron has an argument for greatest basketball player, but he will never be the best, and he's not yet the GOAT. Maybe in a few years, but not quite now. But living in a time now where we've got LeBron playing, we've got Stephen Curry playing, and we have maybe a future GOAT in Giannis playing, but that's a different conversation. It's weird to see so many good players playing right now, and the top 20 just becomes tighter and tighter. Steph Curry wasn't in my top 10 before he won the last chip last season, but now he's in my top 10. Will LeBron hit the greatest player of all time? I don't know, but for now, it's definitely true that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time. Please like, comment and subscribe, and thank you for watching.